Hello, I'm Lemon Wizard, and I'm the moderator of our Sci Fi Writers. Sadly, due to real life troubles, I haven't been putting much effort into promoting the sub over the last year, but I'm trying to turn that around and bring more activity back into the sub. One of the things I'm starting with is posting a series of lectures for beginning sci fi writers to help explain the genre, talk about common tropes and pitfalls beginning writers may stumble into, and to help less experienced writers gain a better understanding of how they can turn their idea into the very best story that it can be. What I want to talk about in our first session is the genre as a whole and why we choose to write about it. Science fiction is a relatively new genre in fiction that has emerged in the last 200 years, but has since exploded in popularity and gained a prominent role in our cultural consciousness. The timing is no coincidence, as this was the time when the impacts of science itself became vastly more prominent in people's daily lives. Though we have records of individuals performing evidence based studies similar to the modern scientific method going all the way back to ancient Egypt, it did not become the widespread standard for verifying facts until the beginning of the 19th century. And at that point, the proliferation of the scientific method enabled the Industrial Revolution, and the rate of humanity's technological progress accelerated to a completely unprecedented level. Prior to this point, very few literary works imagined the ways that technology might change future society, as the idea that society is constantly changing is actually a distinctly modern worldview. Technological advancement did occur during antiquity, but new innovations happened so rarely and spread so slowly that most of the people around had no real ability to notice that it was happening. As a medieval serf, your grandfather was probably living exactly the same lifestyle you are, growing the same crops with the same tools for the same noble family. There is no point in living memory where society was substantially different from how you currently perceive it, and since serfs aren't getting any kind of reliable historical education, the slow change over centuries is not something you'll ever have the chance to see. Most people in that time thought that things have always been this way, and things would continue to always be this way. Today, we live in a time where society changes so quickly that each generation has huge differences in experience from those who came before. My own grandfather grew up on a farm with no running water or electricity, and if he wanted to read a book, he needed to hitchhike to the nearest town with a library. By the time I knew him as an old man, he would download new ebooks constantly and read new articles every single day. He loved the internet, and he told me that being able to immediately learn about anything that made him curious was a miracle to him. To me, the internet is completely normal, and being able to easily research any question is something many young people take for granted. Yet, we know that science and technology continue to advance, and it makes us wonder just what incredible new things might come in our futures. Technology is capable of doing many things, both miraculous and horrific. And now that public consciousness knows that society will always change, we are naturally curious to imagine what those changes are. Science fiction isn't about imagining how new technologies would work. That's what real science is for. Science fiction is about speculating if such a technology existed, how would it change our lives? What are the ways it might make society better or worse? When George Orwell wrote 1984, it was 1948, and at that time, the television was a bulky and unreliable item only the absolute richest people could afford, and average people only ever saw a newsreel when you went to a theater. Orwell's concept of a telescreen that was flat, mass produced, and mounted basically everywhere was science fiction, and the idea of everyone having a movie theater in their home was supposed to be a depiction of a high tech future. The fact that the telescreen contained recording equipment and transmitted data back to the government was also science fiction. But today in 2024, everybody having a flat screen TV on the wall in their home is completely normal, and devices that can send and receive information are commonplace. And most modern readers who are picking up 1984 will not even identify these things as the sci fi elements they were intended to be. Orwell never once attempts to explain how the telescreen works, because that doesn't actually matter to the story. What makes telescreens matter to the story is that Orwell is asking the question: if the government had a screen in everyone's home and could make the whole country watch propaganda all day, what would that do to society? And he was absolutely right that broadcast media would eventually become the dominant medium for political propaganda. And he was absolutely right that it would be broadcast basically anywhere and everywhere. The speculative science in 1984 has been irrelevant for decades, but the book is more appreciated today than it was during Orwell's life, precisely because so many of his fears about the technology's implications and how mass media could be abused came true. Even with dated technological understandings, 1984 actually feels more realistic today than it did in 1948. Orwell took his experience with real world fascism and imagined what that ideology would look like with an upgraded toolkit. Or you might look at something like the science depicted in Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, which is primarily nonsense by modern standards, but the story remains a classic because its true purpose is not, to instruct how to raise a dead body. It's about a philosophical examination of the moral implications of creating a life and talking about an indictment of neglectful and abusive parenting, which is what Dr. Frankenstein does to his creation. And those aspects of the story are very real human personal themes that have retained relevance 200 years later, even long after we've known the science is bunk. Or you could look at Jules Verne. A lot of the novels he wrote get some of the details so incredibly wrong that to a modern reader it actually seems kind of funny. But his idea that one day technology might let us build vehicles that can go to the moon or to the bottom of the ocean did prove true. And his fantastic story has helped inspire many scientists to pursue the real means of achieving those goals. Science fiction literature actually can age well, even if the science doesn't, because, like all literature, science fiction is about exploring human themes. People love science fiction because anticipating our futures, whether because we hope for good things or we fear bad ones, is an experience that all humans share. This is why the genre resonates, and this is why we write it. Science fiction is not about how we make new technology, it's about why we make new technology. As a sci fi writer, we can have the power to make people think about the ethical implications of technology, and at our craft's greatest degree of success, it can inspire people to see the warning signs of futures we fear and create instead futures that are worth dreaming about. It's up to people to shape the future, and the future that they shape is going to be based on what their image of a better future looks like. And science fiction writers have an incredible ability to shape that image. The genre has inspired both social change and technological progress for generations and has changed our world in more ways than I could possibly relate in this short video. Um, that's why I write sci-fi, and I hope it might inspire some of you to try writing the genre as well, because I think it has a lot of value, a lot of importance, and it lets us talk about things that people might not necessarily want to listen to you about if you directly told them that you were talking about politics instead of dressing it up in an intriguing story that tells a narrative instead of relates a bunch of facts in a list. Um, but yeah, I think that mostly covers the introductory letter. I want to thank you all for watching. I'm going to try and post at least one of these each week. Lecture 2 is going to be focused on the differences between soft and hard sci-fi, choosing the subgenre that is best suited for your story, and also some research tips and advice on how to write technobabble that sounds plausibly scientific while remaining vague enough that most people won't notice you're not actually saying anything. I'm also going to be scheduling weekly discussion sessions on our Discord server every Saturday, the first of which will be this week on February 2nd at noon Pacific time and 3 p.m. Eastern. I encourage anybody who's at all interested to come, regardless of how much experience you have. Beginners are welcome and invited. And I also encourage anybody who wants to just have a conversation, even before then, to post on our subreddit with, questions, ideas, thoughts, talk about your work or the work that inspires you. We're a small community right now, but I think we can grow, and I think that a lot of the people watching this right now can help us grow. So I hope very soon to hear from some of you, to meet some of you, and to be reading some of your work, because I think that we can make a really great community here, and I'm excited. So thank you very much, and have a lovely day.